So, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are joining us in this meeting. I am very, very delighted to be a partner with the Good Hope Theological Seminary. And I want to thank Brother Shola Israel, who connected me with this team and the opportunity that I have today to share with you on a critical topic, leading in crisis. Now, you will also bear with me because I have some cold I have been battling with in the last 2 days, but it's much better. So if you get a coarse voice, just bear with me. So I would like to share my slide very quickly, then we can connect with what the Lord has for us in terms of leadership or leading in crisis. So give me a minute. Thank you very much for this time once again. And I think I had mentioned I am Dr. Abraham H. Gaga. I work with Development Associates International. I am the team lead for West Africa Anglophone. We are a leadership institution, and we love raising and building Christian leaders across the world. And I believe that God will help us as we engage with this topic, leading in crisis, and with a rider, building resilient leadership in times of crisis. So follow me very closely as we look at this interesting topic. Now, first is understanding crisis, okay? And here is a definition I would like to leave with you. It says, crisis is any form of unrest that disturbs the peaceful way of life of a person or a people group or a country, all right? Once there is a distortion in the normality of people's way of life, it spells a crisis, any kind of crisis, that might evolve from it. And a second definition, which I got from the net, says a crisis is an unforeseen event that causes restlessness among the people of an organization. Okay, good. So it is helping us to see that, hey, whenever there is a restlessness in an organization amongst the people, it also spells for us a crisis. So this is really something that is crucial for us to understand. So bottom line, it is an abnormal situation. It is not a common thing that is happening, so something interrupted a normal day-to-day activities. That is crisis. And you will also know that when there is a crisis, we live in a world that is described today with the acronym VOCA. Okay, and what does that mean? By the way, it is that the world is volatile. There is a high level of volatility in the world that we live in today. You can't predict tomorrow, okay? There is uncertainty, yes. So you wake up with one news today and you wake up with another tomorrow and you just don't know what will happen. So it is really, really important we connect with this perspective of the kind of world we live in today. And the world is also complex, very complex. You are not able to substantiate simplicity. So there is a lot of complex rules, laws, wars going around, and things like that. And lastly is ambiguity. Okay, we kind of have a larger than life picture of things that should be. Okay, so humanity is already thinking of going to live in the moon, going to live on other planet with Elon Musk and his projects. Okay, larger than life, ambiguous dreams and desires. AI has come and you're wondering, you can just do everything. I can just be an AI doing this teaching, and I am not really a human that exists. AI is taking things to another level now. So we live in a context that is described as VOCA. volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So with that in mind, let me share a few categories that we can put crisis into. Okay. Now, looking at crisis, we can categorize crisis into a few boxes. I just have three, and you can add more because we can't exhaust it. All right. So we have internal and external crisis. Yeah, internal and external. Now, when we say internal crisis, examples will be what to wear. When you woke up this morning, you were thinking, "Hey, what do I put on?" That's a crisis on its own. You see a white shirt or you see a brown, you see the shoes. What do I wear? And what do I eat? It's an internal crisis. It's in you. You are the one battling with those thoughts, and they are a form of crisis. Internal. External crisis can include family crisis, husband and wife, parent and children, tribal crisis, religious crisis, so something outside of you, but has an impact on you in one way or the other. Okay. So the next category I want to share is man-made crisis and natural crisis. Okay, so many times we fall into crisis not because it's natural, but because as humans we created them. Examples will be grain storage. There are lots of people who are into grain storage. It's like becoming a business now. So when people have not eaten, the rich will buy a lot of grains in thousands, if not millions of naira and dollar, and then they store it up. So people live in hunger, and then they resell it at a higher price. So we talk about inflation, we talk about hunger, but people are creating that. Now, just to substantiate for us, during Joseph in the Bible, when we read about Joseph and storage of grain, now Joseph stored grain during the years of plenty. The Egyptians and everyone who lived there had abundance of food. So it was during the abundance of food that Joseph stored, not during hunger. So for human beings to be in their country and to be storing food when the nationalities, when the people are not fed, is not practicing what Joseph practiced. Okay, it is creating artificial starvation. Yeah. The next is deforestation. A lot of times, because we need fire, we go into the bush and we cut down trees and we don't plant trees. It is expected that if you fall one tree, you plant 10. Absolutely. Yeah, that's God desires us to live with nature. And so do not destroy that which God has. So those are man-made disasters or crises that we have. And natural disasters will include flood, tsunami, okay, earthquakes, and things like that spells for us natural crisis. The other one I want to talk about is individual and organizational crisis. Okay, so there are crises that come to us and it's directed to one person, you, or it's to the organization. So things like you lose your job. Okay, so if for any reason you are fired or relieved of your duty, that's personal. Okay, you lose a loved one, or you fail exams in school. It's personal. It's not the whole class. It's you. Okay, so then the organizational crisis can be a bad leadership. Someone who is not taking the people along in the direction that the organizational goal is leading. Okay, distrust. When you have a toxic organizational relationship, distrust becomes so high, and it shatters. It's a crisis on its own. Conflict ensues. All right. So no salary. If your accountant comes and say, "Hey, sorry, we can't pay salaries this month," it's going to set the place ablaze. like I mentioned earlier, we cannot exhaust this. So these are the three categories I want to leave with you. Feel free to add any more if you have, but build on these thoughts. And I believe the Lord will give you insight and understanding on that. Now, we are going to use two characters that have lived to understand how they lived during crisis and what they did. And I want to point out four critical principles or things that a leader must have and must do in order to lead in crisis. Yeah, there are four key principles and four key approaches that I want to share. The Lord has put in my heart, and we'll be looking at two key characters that have lived on earth. We know about them, and the Lord will help us going forward in Jesus' name. Thank you. So the first person is Nelson Mandela. Now, Nelson Mandela is a native of South Africa, and he lived, of course, in South Africa. But he lived during the time when South Africa was under the rule of the Dutch. The people of the Netherlands invaded South Africa in the 16th century and another batch in the 18th century. Now they took over that land and maybe just for history's sake, because the Lord granted me opportunity to be at Robben Island where Mandela was imprisoned. And so the history has it that the way God instructed Abraham to go to a land he will show him to take over. Now, and so God brought Abraham to the land of Canaan. And he said, I will give this land to you, your children, your grandchildren. Okay, so the Netherlands went to South Africa and took possession of that land as an instruction from God. Those are the Bible believing Christians. Okay, so that's the history. They saw South Africa as their own land, as their own Canaan, which God has given to them. And so you see believers who trust in Jesus, and they actually hold on to that verse. But that being said, let's focus on what we want to look at today. South Africa was under the rule of the Dutch when Nelson Mandela was born, and he lived through that time until their freedom. It was a time of crisis. He grew during the time of crisis. They were victimized. No school, no food. And if for any reason they even go to school, they go to schools that are not as good as the school that the whites were going to. Discrimination, a lot of it. Apartheid. Their skin color betrayed them. Okay, their culture betrayed them. So there was this resistance, there was this apartheid, and a lot of things, the blacks did not get their right in their own land. Their lands were taken, their harvests were taken, their women, their resources, they were taxed at different front, all to the prosperity of the Dutch. Okay, so there was a lot going on, and Nelson Mandela needed to stand and say, we need freedom. We want liberation. And that was his own crisis. Your crisis may be different, but they will follow the same pattern. And I want to just share that very quickly. So what was the solution for Nelson Mandela? How did he approach it? He was visionary. So one of the first things you must understand is to succeed as a leader in crisis, you have to be visionary. He saw freedom ahead of his equals. Nelson knew, yes, for now we're in bondage, but in a few years, in a few months, freedom is possible. Visionary. So for a leader to lead in crisis, he or she must see ahead of their equals. You must see what you are looking for. Nelson saw freedom. Nelson saw freedom. Visionary. The second thing that I believe I see in Nelson Mandela is his method was uncommon. While other people, Shaka Zulu, were warriors and said, leave our land. We are taking it by force. Nelson said, no, non-violent approach. It's possible for us to get this freedom and we can achieve it without violence. We can achieve it on a round table discussion. So he read law. Nelson Mandela said, we're going to look into this and be able to achieve it by dialogue, by intellectual, debate and negotiation. So he had a method. And he knew that that method works. That method is not faulty. So as a leader, you must have a method. What is it that can work? Okay, for you to lead your people out of that crisis. And another thing that we see is that he established a process. So Nelson Mandela had a process. When they are asked, okay, write what you need, they wrote and took to the government. No, the United Nations will say, okay, let us know what is happening. They will write and send it. You need to appear in court. They go to court for that process. You need to do this. Now, what do you mean? So he followed one process to the other. We are coming out today to declare our sadness for what you have done. They get permission to be able to do it, unless when they are denied. And if they are denied, they take their right as citizens and then take a peaceful demonstration to express themselves. He followed a process. Process will generate support for you. Okay? And over time will break the strength of the institution. So and Nelson Mandela understood that there is a process that you can't deny. No matter how wicked or evil an organization is, when you follow the right process to get your right, with time, you get the support of external people and you achieve your purpose because you followed a process. So leading in crisis means you need to be familiar with the type of process, with the kind of organization, and what the policy has to say on process to achieving that vision that you have. Whatever vision it is, what is the process? Is it in a country? You need freedom for election. Is it in an organization? You need increment of salary. Go to the policy of your organization. Look into it. It speaks to how salaries are to be generated. Use that to engage the leadership. And wherever you go to, you get support because you followed process. If it needs you to have 2/3 majority of the staff to sign before salaries are increased, follow a process, write a letter, get everyone to sign. It's important. Process generates external support for you and breaks the institution over time. So and Nelson Mandela understood this. So he worked through a process that brought freedom to South Africa. And lastly, when it comes to leading in crisis, is that you sacrifice your life. He sacrificed his life. Nelson Mandela had a family who understood our father must fight for the country. Nelson Mandela didn't care that he will be in prison any day, any time. In fact, even if it were to lead to his death, he was ready. Now, and so to lead during crisis is not a thing you do without counting the cost. It will cost your life. And when I say it will cost your life, sometimes it doesn't mean you will die, but your time for family. Think of it that He was away from his family for 27 years. Before those 27 years, he was in and out of prison 1 week, 2 weeks, 2 months, 1 day, and all of it. So he didn't have time for his family. His children didn't have his time because he was fighting for a cause. Wanting to lead, in crisis is you must be able to know that I'm sacrificing my time, I'm sacrificing my money, I'm sacrificing my life. It's going for this cause. So very, very important. No pain, no gain. All right. The second character that I will want us to meet is Jesus. Oh yes, Jesus. Now, when we read scripture, sometimes we are in a hurry and we don't see this very, very important perspective about Jesus Christ. So, Jesus, like Nelson Mandela, lived when the Jews were under the rule of the Romans. Yes, the Romans were leading. Pontius Pilate, Herod, were all assigned and sent from Rome. They were victimized. No food. The Jews were victimized. That's why you have people like the Zealots. The Zealots are people group or Jews who want to take their freedom by force. And so one of the Jesus's disciples is Simon the Zealot. That's right. So we have the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Zealots. Absolutely. There was appetite, killing. When Jesus was young, just a year or two, because Herod wanted to get him, he ordered to kill babies, Jewish babies, exclusively. And then you will find out that Jesus gave an instruction and said, if you are asked to go 1 mile, go 2 miles, because they will beat you for no reason. So support them. Do what they say you should do. Freedom is coming. Their land was taken, their harvest, their women, their resources. The Jews pay tax. And that's why when Jesus came, somebody came to say, should we pay tax to Caesar or not? Remember? Yeah. And Jesus said, hey, give to Caesar what is Caesar's and to God what is God. Now, there's a lot. The Jews were under a crisis, under a difficult situation. Then Jesus came. So he led in crisis. He led when things were not good for them. But let's look at the 4 key things that Jesus understood and also stood on as a principle. Jesus was a visionary. He knew that his purpose of coming was to establish the church. The church. That's right. Then his method was uncommon, non-violence. Jesus was also desiring that we will be able to achieve building the church, instituting the church without violence. And the third thing is Jesus followed a process. The process was the good news about the kingdom. Yes, he brought good news. It was a process. It is not the law, it's the kingdom. The law is a process, but the kingdom is also a process. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Process of kingdom lifestyle, kingdom approach, kingdom mindset was his process. And he achieved it. And lastly, of course, we know Jesus sacrificed his life to be able to achieve that vision. So, this is really important. The topic before us is leading in crisis. Therefore, in black and white, leading in crisis is the same as leading like Jesus did. So, we need to lead like Christ. And then we will succeed in every kind of crisis that comes to us, whether it be family, whether it be tribal, whether it be organizational, whether it be individual. You will be able to be resilient. You will be able to hold on and have a focus going forward through it. So you must have a vision. What is the vision you have for your family? What is the vision you have for your organization? What is the vision you are holding forth in your own kind of crisis? It's very important. The vision will help you, the end in mind. You must have a method. There are different ways that people want to approach solving problems. What is your own principle? What is your own model that works? Then you must follow a process. You can't go behind closed doors. You can't cut corners. You must have a process that will help you achieve that. And lastly is that you must be ready to give your life. Brothers and sisters, no pain, no gain. You have to understand that in leading like Christ, in leading during crisis, your life is on the line. Okay? So in conclusion, your vision keeps you focused. Your method helps you avoid distraction. Your process mobilizes support for you, and your sacrifice pays the price. So leading in crisis requires these 4 key elements that will help you to be resilient, to be focused, to be out for everything you believe. Because it is said that what is worth fighting for is worth dying for. So as a Christian leader, what is the crisis you're passing through? And what would you have God say to you in times like this, in your approach to bring in solution to your people? Have a vision, have a method, have a process, and be ready to sacrifice. It's my prayer that what I have said, the Lord will use it to strengthen you and to help you through the crisis you're going through. And once again, I want to thank the Good Hope Theological Seminary for this chance to reach out to many lives. And it's my prayer that God will help us to lead this generation in the way Jesus will want us to. Thank you very much, and God bless you. Bye.